Okay, so good morning to everyone. I hope that you got some sleep yesterday, or at least you had coffee this morning. It's also important. So I'm glad that we are going to start with our first session. So as we mentioned before, it's going to be about regional transformation. So it's a region that has faced enormous difficulties and challenges the past years, and it's slowly moving towards regional transformation and will lead to European integration. Accession negotiations are delayed, and it's also questioning whether there are the necessary resources or if the countries will overcome the obstacles. And of course, in this context, youth sector and also civil society has a significant role and very important impact. So we're going to delve deeper on this topic through three main discussions. So I would like to start first with Mr. Ivan Damjanovski. He's Associate Professor at the Faculty of Law at the University of Kyrillic and Methodius. So, Mr. Damjanovski, what's in, what's next, and what's not?
Okay, can you hear me? Is this thing working? Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to face a live audience after roughly 2 years. And I was really eager to do that because I'm sick and tired of looking at images on the screen rather than looking at real people. The title of my presentation is What's in, What's not, What's next, unpacking the EU strategy for the region of Southeast Europe. And when this title was first presented to me by the organizers, the first thing that came to my mind is that it's great, it looks really good, it captures everything that I could say about this, but also it looks like an euphemism, like a sugar-coated version of another play of words that I would use. The bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and with an emphasis on the ugly, unfortunately. So, how to unpack the EU enlargement strategy towards the Western Balkans, as it is in its original title? It's not easy to unpack in roughly 10 to 15 minutes, having in mind that compared to the other strategies of enlargement with other regions in the past, this current enlargement strategy is by far the most complex and unfortunately the least successful approach towards EU accession of candidate countries. So, what's in? What do we have at the moment? What's the outlook of the current EU strategy towards the region, towards the Western Balkans? It was conceived in 2005 as a response to the so-called Thessaloniki Declaration from 2003, where the member states within the European Council back then practically pledged a promise towards the countries from the Western Balkans that they would have a guaranteed future in the European Union as future member states. So based on that, in 2005, the European Commission came up with the so-called EU enlargement strategy for the Western Balkans and Turkey, which was a novel, I would say revolutionary document, which was based on the lessons learned from the previous enlargements. Basically, the EU is saying we don't want to repeat the mistakes that we have done in 2004 and 2007, so now we will completely overhaul our approach towards these new potential candidates for membership. So, since then, there is one core principle of EU's approach towards the Western Balkans, and that is the principle of fair and rigorous conditionality, which means that the conditions for the accession of the candidate states would become more rigorous and more fairly applied in terms of how the EU evaluates compliance with these conditions. Now, the next major reform in this enlargement strategy came in 2012 with the so-called new approach towards accession negotiations. In a nutshell, the new approach meant that the whole accession process of the Western Balkans from now on will be anchored by reforms in rule of law. In other words, rule of law and democratic governance have been placed at the heart of the enlargement process. Or basically, they are the anchor, meaning that if there is no progress in rule of law reforms in the Western Balkans, basically there can be no progress in any other policy. So everything is tied, connected to progress in rule of law. And the latest major overhaul of EU's approach towards the Western Balkans occurred last year in 2020, when basically a completely new segment was added to this way of thinking, as a result of criticism and reservations that came from French President Macron in 2019, who basically criticized the current state of play and practically wanted further reform into how the EU will approach the Western Balkans. So what emerged out of that is the so-called new methodology, which is striving for more political commitment from the EU towards the Western Balkans, more dynamism in the accession negotiations, more investment into capacities, and another major feature is the idea of reversibility of the process, meaning that those who are doing well in compliance with EU conditions, EU rules, should be further rewarded, but those who are not complying well, their status can be reversed now. So they should be punished in a way. So that answers the question, what's in? What do we have, right? On paper it looks good, but unfortunately the reality is not that bright. So what's not? What do we don't have? What's the outcome of this strategy towards the EU? Two things are lacking at the moment: effectiveness and credibility. As already said before, this approach towards the Western Balkans, this enlargement strategy conceived by the EU, has had uneven returns. It has some success, obviously, especially in compliance within certain policies across the region. In some countries are more successful, some less, but still you cannot say that it wasn't successful. I don't know, the so-called European model of judicial governance has been implemented in basically every candidate country and potential candidate country. But on the other hand, in terms of implementation of rules, uneven success. A lot of stagnation. In many cases throughout the years, there have been a lot of democratic backsliding, competitive authoritarianism in some cases, state capture, and so on and so forth. But that is also related to the second thing that is missing. And according to me, that is the most important negative factor that influences what we have today. Credibility of the process. This is the least credible enlargement round probably in history. But what we mean by credibility? Credibility means that both the candidate countries, but even more important, the member states of the European Union as a whole, is open towards enlargement, right? Is eager to work with the candidate countries. And unfortunately, that has not been the case with the Western Balkans. There is a high correlation between the pace and quality in reforms in the candidate countries and the credibility of the accession perspective. Meaning that the more the accession perspective is credible, the more the governments of the candidate countries will be willing to comply with the criteria for membership. That has been the case with the Central and Eastern European countries, and that has been also the case with the countries from Southeast Europe. The EU leverage is very low at the moment because of the lack of credibility. What differs this enlargement round in comparison to the previous ones is the so-called nationalization of the accession process, which has lowered the credibility of the accession to the EU. In other words, in the past, it was the European Commission that spearheaded the accession process, and the member states would overwhelmingly support the evaluations of the European Commission. That is no longer the case. EU capitals, member states, has made a habit of disregarding the opinion of the European Commission, and they're increasingly intervening at key decision-making points on enlargement by blocking them or derailing the process. And usually using bilateral disputes with the candidate countries, which in many cases have nothing to do with the actual criteria for accession. So at the moment, probably the credibility is at its lowest point since 2005, I would say. At the moment, there is a complete deadlock. Just when things were getting better in 2018, with the signing of the Prespa agreement and the resolution of the dispute between North Macedonia and Greece, and two additional countries were on track to open accession negotiations, North Macedonia and Albania. First, France, with the backing of the Netherlands, started to stall the process by insisting on this new methodology. So there were non-decisions at the meetings of the Council of the European Union in 2018 and 2019. And the latest deadlock occurred last year, when the negotiation framework for starting of the accession negotiations for North Macedonia and Albania was blocked. Basically, Bulgaria blocked the negotiation framework for North Macedonia based on a dispute related to historical interpretations and the language. And then, as a spillover effect, other member states like the Czech Republic, Austria, and Slovakia decided to block the complete process, practically not to allow a decoupling between North Macedonia and Albania. So basically, Albania is also blocked. And also had a negative spillover in the accession negotiations with the two countries that are actually negotiating. They are Serbia and Montenegro. So, finally, what's next? There are some good things and there are some ugly things to be discussed. The good things, as a way to somehow backtrack on this deadlock, the EU, with encouragement from several member states, most importantly Germany, practically conceived the Berlin process. which is a process that involves all the potential candidates and candidate countries from the Western Balkans, some member states of the EU and the EU in some capacity, which is practically a process of regional cooperation, which is trying to improve infrastructure, digital connectivity among the Western Balkan states and the Western Balkans with the European Union. The latest initiative, which it is still early to say whether it will be successful or not, is the so-called Common Regional Market Initiative, which strives towards further economic integration between the Western Balkan countries, which is concentrating on the 4 freedoms of movement, which are the pillars of the common European market, the market of the European Union. And third, there is financial assistance for the Western Balkans in the new financial framework, the EU budget for the next 6 years, which was recently adopted. However, there is a hint here. When you look at the financial package, it looks like it's a lot of money, but many academicians and researchers have been criticizing the amount of money which is available for the Western Balkans at the moment, especially compared to how much assistance the other countries from the Balkans, which are already members of the European Union, will get. Just to give you a hint, in terms of per capita, in the period 2021-2027, the Western Balkans will be given 500 euros per capita. During the same period, Greece will receive 5,700 euro, and Croatia, for example, which is how much? 3 times smaller, has a smaller population than Greece, will receive almost the same amount of money, 5,200 euros. So you see the effects of this uneven financial assistance towards the member states and towards the candidate countries, right? Of course, always the EU member states would get more money. That's why they're member states. But still, this would create an even further disparity in the region. If the current blockade of the whole accession process is not lifted, 2 other things come to my mind that will be next, and I will finish with this, and which would have a negative effect on the accession process and on further integration of the Western Balkans with the European Union. First, it is inevitable that there will be rising Euroscepticism in the Western Balkans. Even now, only Albania and Kosovo have rather high percentages of support for EU membership. Already in Serbia, in Montenegro, in North Macedonia, and in Bosnia, the numbers are low. Okay, they are above 50%, they're above 60%, right? But for example, in North Macedonia, 10 years ago, they were above 90%, right? Now they're below 60, and constantly rising, which tells you that the credibility of the process also impacts the support for European integration. So it's inevitable that Euroscepticism will be on the rise. And second, this creates a geostrategical void. The EU insists that the Western Balkans is a geostrategic priority for the EU, but this thing offsets the complete idea. So non-Western, non-democratic actors are gaining further influence in the Western Balkans, right? Now, in the past, I always disregarded this. People have been warning, have been speaking about this, the influx of China, of Russia, the Western Balkans, and I would always say that's nonsense, right? You know, you are panicking. But now, for the first time, I could say that there could be some truth in this. So you have rise of illiberal tendencies, and you have this, you could have this adoption of this model of authoritarian capitalism, which could be more and more appealing to the populations. To wrap up, what we know so far, at least we as researchers, is that the domestic political and administrative actors in the Western Balkans lack the capacity to pursue critical reforms without external incentives, without the backing from the European Union. So having said that, right, unless something is done, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, I don't think that we can be reserved optimists as we have been so far, but there is a huge chunk of pessimism coming in the near future if things are not fixed quickly. And on that negative bombshell, unfortunately, I will give the floor back to the chairwoman.
So, thank you very much, Mr. Damianowski, for giving us an overall view from what was happening, what is happening right now, and also what maybe in the future will happen. Thank you very much regarding EU strategy. So I would like to continue for our second main discussion topic, cooperation and partnership for the integration process. So firstly, we have with us Mrs. Petra Balazic. She's here with us via Zoom. And she's political advisor at the Regional Cooperation. And I would like to ask Ms. Balazic, what is the role of the civil society? What steps have made until now? So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope you can all hear me well. Please just
Yes.
interrupt me if you can't hear me.
No, we can hear you clearly.
Great. So first of all, I'm really happy to be addressing you today. I'm really sorry that I can't be there in person. It really would have been a pleasure. But if there's one thing pandemic taught us is that we can be together even when we are apart. That's probably the one good thing that has come out of the whole thing. And as you said, I am the political advisor at the Regional Cooperation Council. I have been in this position for 3 years. And I would really like to address this topic and your question from the experience that I have gathered working within the framework of regional cooperation efforts. But I'd like to start a bit differently because I noticed that regional cooperation has become sort of a buzzword. It has become really popular. Everybody's using it these days. All the cool kids are using it. But I would like to take a step back and consider what it is that makes regional cooperation important and why is this something that we are striving for, and also in that context, what the role of civil society and population groups is. We all are aware that the EU has made it a de facto precondition for joining the Union for the Western Balkans. Some people do say that it has been a sort of way to relay the integration process. And that's why it's important to ask what is the added value that regional cooperation brings to the table, what it means for us. And asking that question is not a heresy. I believe it's crucial that we address it, because once we start accepting something for its own sake, we begin to lose sight of the bigger picture. And we see sometimes the resistance to this concept when it becomes empty, when it becomes hollow. We see the people and the politicians sort of unsure of what it means and why they should be subscribing to it. And I think that we can only break this resistance by engaging critically with it. So that's what I would like to start with, asking why regional cooperation is important. Is it important? And what do we really get from it? And obviously, I would not be working where I am if I did not think it was important. So my argument will be yes. But I think it's really a multidimensional thing. In the first place, in essence, the cooperation is the foundation of democratic standards. So when we practice cooperation, we are really practicing democracy at that level. It builds upon dialogue, it builds upon mutual respect, it builds upon us considering absolute wins rather than the zero-sum game. And let's just think about what's happening in the EU and how developments within the EU are perceived. When the cooperation within the EU itself deteriorates, when member states are, for one reason or another, unwilling to work together on a certain issue, then we hear comments that they are deviating from the EU values. So we can say that cooperation is what the EU is really about. And when we exercise cooperation, we are approximating to the EU. But okay, this is perhaps a bit of a philosophical matter. It's a bit abstract. So, let's approach it from more practical terms. And the truth of the matter is, as the speaker before me has really pointed out well, we are in a very dire situation. We are not doing so well. And the matter of fact is we depend on cooperation to achieve the socioeconomic standards akin to those of the EU average. And this is not only, it is a story of the EU enlargement and the EU integration process, but it is also the story of our lives. It is the story of what we experience on a day-to-day basis. What are the standards of living that we are enjoying? So to paint a picture, economically speaking, to date, none of the Western Balkan economies can compare to the member states of the European Union. In 2016, so long before the pandemic, and after we have done some good progress in recovering from the previous economic recession, the average level of GDP per capita of the Western Balkans was only 30 to 42% that of the EU average GDP per capita, which meant that even at an annual growth rate of 6 or 7%, which is huge, reaching the EU average would take about 20 years. So that's an entire new generation or more of reaching EU standards. And if we look at unemployment, again, prior to the COVID pandemic, average unemployment rate in the Western Balkans was 18.3%. And EU average in that same year was 7.3%. And it's especially acute among young people, where average regional youth unemployment rate in 2019 was 35%, which is double that of the EU average. And almost 1/4 of Western Balkans youth are currently neither in employment, nor in education, nor in training. And as a result of this, we see a large-scale brain drain. And I recently read a study where it calculated that the average annual net outflow from the region is about 7,500 people. That's 7,500 people leaving the region each year. And this is actually excluding Kosovo because they did not have the data for Kosovo. So the number is probably even larger than that. And the UN has calculated that by 2050, Western Balkans could lose 14% of its entire population. So how do we expect to build a sustainable future if we have this sharp decline in the human capital, which is really our most important resource? So why are we in the situation that we are? Because the Western Balkan economies are small markets, they're insufficiently digitalized, they rely on services sector, they have weak investments in research, development, and innovation, and weak investments in SME development. And this makes them in turn unattractive to large-scale foreign investments. They are uncompetitive in the global markets, and they are vulnerable to exogenous shocks, such as the global economic recession, and as we have seen, the pandemic as well. And now I come back to cooperation and why it's important. When we establish a cooperative framework, we enlarge these small markets and we direct joint efforts towards sustainable economic development based on EU policy standards. And in this way, the region as a whole becomes more attractive to investors, our markets become more versatile, the business conduct becomes easier, skills mismatch becomes smaller and employment opportunities become greater. So again, I repeat, if we want to enjoy the standards of life akin to those in the EU, cooperation is really the best bet that we have at the moment. And this is really the mandate of the Regional Cooperation Council, is to advance the regional cooperation agenda. So we are working on the implementation of the common regional market, which has been mentioned, which aims to create a regional investments area, regional research and innovation area, regional digital area, and a regional industry area. And these are to be underpinned by free movements of goods, capital, services, and people, which is obviously a crucial prerequisite if we want to see the actual implementation of the agreements that we conclude. So if you think that this sounds a lot like the EU, you are absolutely right. One benefit of mirroring the EU model in the Western Balkans are the economic considerations, which I have mentioned, but it also brings the Western Balkans closer to the integration path into the EU single market. So I assume that you are all familiar with the Rome like at home regime, which entered into force on the 1st of July. But why it's important is not only because it makes our traveling in the Western Balkans easier and nicer, but also because now the prerequisite has been met to begin the negotiations on lowering the roaming charges between the European Union and the Western Balkans. So when we cooperate as a region, when we harmonize our policies, and when we can speak as a region, then we have a better chance of approximating the EU single market and negotiating benefits from the EU single market for the region. However, and this is when I will start referring to the civil society and the citizens' engagement in large. At the high level politics, regional cooperation has throughout the years been experiencing certain hiccups, certain bumps. Negotiations have been stalled, some have been broken, then we return to them, and it's really a circle which makes the process quite long and quite difficult. But every time that we do stall, it hurts each economy in the region. I mean, fragmentation really has not benefited anyone in all these years since the regional economic integration programs have been implemented. Meanwhile, the citizens are, and this is the fact, the ones who are benefiting most from the fruits that cooperation can bring. So it's not surprising that 77%, according to the Balkan Barometer, believe that regional cooperation can benefit their economic, political, and security situation. So it's really in the citizens' best interest to have an active role in pushing the regional cooperation agenda forward. One way to do this is by engaging parliaments, for the parliaments to be more involved in the entire process, to strengthen the dialogue with the civil society, and to ensure that the voices of currently underrepresented social groups in the decision-making processes are reflected. And here I would like to refer to youth specifically, not only because this is a youth conference, but because experiences of young people are the ones which will determine whether our societies will become prosperous and sustainable ones, or if they will wither away. Youth is the group that makes about 20% of the Western Balkan population, and yet 61% of them said that they would be willing to live and work abroad. And 1/4 of those are already actively exploring the possibilities to do so. I mean, this is really unsurprising, considering that 2/3 of young people are concerned about unemployment, and even the highly educated youth have a 16% lower employment rate relative to their EU peers. At the same time, we see the youth disagree with other population age groups regarding priorities of government investments, prioritizing, as opposed to the older generations in their societies, education and culture, tourism, and science and technology. And obviously, the mechanisms which would ensure that youth voices are included in the decision-making processes are not strong enough, because 92% of Western Balkan citizens believe that public administrations should strengthen these mechanisms. And I'm really happy that the RCC is contributing toward this goal through the Western Balkans Youth Lab project. This is the project which brings together youth and policymakers together to jointly work on priorities of social and youth importance. And I have myself been the coordinator of this project for only half a year. And already I have had the pleasure and honor to meet some really, truly amazing, bright and hardworking young people. And this experience left no grain of doubt in my mind that they can bring to the table much more than we are currently seeing. And to reiterate the point that I really want to make today is that regional cooperation needs to be inclusive, and I mean that regionally and socially. So we are talking all 6 Western Balkan economies, and we are talking all social groups whose voices can be conveyed either through the parliamentary dialogue, through civil society dialogue, or through engaging the underrepresented social groups in the decision-making processes. So this is youth, but this is also women, this is also minorities, and so on. So we need the engagement of high-level politics. Yes, I mean, this is crucial. But we also need engagement of citizens' representatives, of citizens and businesses themselves, of local communities, and all social groups, because these are the key benefactors of the process. And to young people who are here today, I really want to say, as a young person myself, I am very well aware of how frustrating things can get, and how the feeling of dead-end streets everywhere you turn can be really, really daunting. But I want you to trust me when I say, you know, get active, demand change, engage with your local communities, join youth organization, find any way to make sure that your voice is heard, because your voice is valid and you are the future of this region. And you are likely to find that your agency is much greater than you might think in this moment. So once again, thank you all for listening and for giving me this opportunity to address you today. And I very much look forward to the rest of this panel and inputs from my co-panelists. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Ms. Balazits. And we are keeping your last words regarding youth. And I think that in the end of the session, we'll have plenty to discuss. So we are going to continue. Okay. With Ms. Viljana Georgievska. She's a project manager of the Reload 2 program from UNDP in North Macedonia. So we would like to share with us your experience in the field and how local government is connecting to the civil society sector. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Eleni, and thanks to the Youth Alliance Crucial for inviting me today to address the audience and to present the project I've been working on since 2017, and hopefully you will find it beneficial and maybe you will get an idea how you can be engaged in some way. So Reload 2 stands for Regional Program on Local Democracy in the Western Balkan, and it's the second phase of a project, that regional initiative actually, that started in 2017 and is implemented in 7 IPA beneficiaries in the Western Balkans. Aside from North Macedonia, it's implemented in Albania, Kosovo, Montenegro, Serbia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. The first phase was implemented from the period 2017 until December 2020, and starting January this year, We are in a 4-year second phase of the project. And this initiative actually is built on a project that started way in 2009 in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it was called Reinforcement of Local Democracy. All these projects are funded by the European Union and are implemented by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in the countries where, and territories where it's implemented. So the civil society is a really important actor in the reform processes in the Western Balkans that are, supporting the EU integration processes. And in that context, this project supports the EU integration processes by empowering the civil society organizations and the youth to take more active role in the decision making, and by also empowering the legal and financial environment for the civil society organizations to function and operate. The objective of the project is also to strengthen the cooperation between the local governments and the civil society organization by introducing a transparent model for financing of the civil society organizations, and by promoting youth and civic engagement in the community development. Why we're working in the region? I mean, there are many challenges between the cooperation between the local governments and the civil society organizations. Although the funding that is given by the local governments to the civil sector is sizable, most of the time it's not done on clear criteria, it's not done in a transparent manner. So a lot of the civil society organizations depend on funding from the foreign donors. Public funding is, the capacity of the civil society organizations is inadequate. A lot of the reporting that is done by the civil society organizations is not in a proper way. They usually don't report how the funds that they receive are spent. If the results are achieved, they're not measured and they're not shared with the public. Also, what is lacking is the monitoring on the side of the local governments on how the funds are disbursed and how they are spent by the civil society organizations, etc. Also, on the part of the youth, something that is more important for you, as an already mentioned by the previous panelists. I mean, it's really alarming numbers of young people are leaving the country, so there is huge brain drain, and that is majorly because of the limited opportunities for employment. Also, a lack of opportunity for the youth to be engaged in the communities. So how we can address some of these challenges through the project and what we're actually doing? It's firstly, we are working with the local governments to support them in introducing the model of financing of civil society organizations that is transparent, accountable, and based on the priorities of the communities, and those priorities are usually defined with cooperation with the civil society organizations. So actually it's done in participatory manner by inclusion of civil society organizations in these discussions. And here I would like to mention that as part of the first project in Bosnia that I mentioned, LOT project, a methodology was developed, and it's called LOT methodology. And it's actually a set of documents and steps on how to transparently finance civil society organizations. And that methodology is actually aligned with the best EU practices of financing civil society organizations. So we are working with the municipalities, with partner municipalities, in introducing this methodology. We are hoping that this methodology will become a standard practice when it comes to financing of civil society organizations from local government municipal budgets. This methodology is really easily adjustable, so it can be used not only by the local governments but other public institutions. And also, in order to help municipalities, local governments to introduce this model, we are providing tailored capacity building trainings, mentoring, and on-the-job trainings for the local officials. Parallel to this, we are working with the civil society organizations through organizing jointly with the local governments grant schemes where based on the priorities that the civil society organizations together with the local governments would define, a public calls are announced in each municipalities. And for this project, this phase of the project, we are planning to have 3 public calls in each municipality that we will work in. And those usually the topics vary from social inclusion, gender equality, environment, human rights, youth, especially youth. And also we are providing capacity building for the civil society organizations in how to better prepare project proposals, and also we are actually preparing them for preparation of the project proposals for other donors as well. It's not only for the grants that we are awarding. And also we provide mentoring for the civil society organizations, and this is something that was introduced in the first phase, and I have to say that it was really evident after it was introduced that the quality of the projects we received and the number of projects that were approved for financing drastically increased. I can just give you the numbers that through the trainings that were provided in the first phase, and we were working in 53 local governments in the region. Approximately 2,000 CSO representatives were trained, coming from more than 1,400 civil society organizations. In this phase of the project, we will also target 50 new and some old local governments, so we're hoping that we will reach again this number of or even surpass the number of civil society organizations trained and mentored through the activities we're providing. I also have to mention that we always try to make synergies with other projects, so we also collaborate with Taxo 3 and the resource centers where possible, so just in order to avoid overlaps in the activities or the trainings that are offered. A novelty in this phase of the project is the youth component, something that will be of interest for you. We are targeting youth in more structured way, although we were supporting youth initiatives in the first phase of the projects, but we just realized that it has to be done in a better way. So what we are doing is we will work with youth organizations and civil society organizations supporting youth through 3 sub-components. One will be youth community and civic engagement activity, where youth organization will be encouraged to take part in the community activities. Thematic forums will be organized where the youth CSOs can debate on the topics that are of interest for the young of those in those communities, but also for the citizens in those communities. And based on the initiatives that will come out from these thematic forums, some of those will be financially supported and implemented. Another component is vocational training, internship, and first job experience. I have to say that the approach we are having in this phase of the project is we are adjusting the implementation approach depending on the context of each country. So, for example, in North Macedonia, this subcomponent will not be implemented because there are many projects that already work on the improving of the skills among the young. So we thought that we shouldn't overlap that activity as well, but it will be implemented in the remaining IPA beneficiaries. And here it will be, the colleagues will work on either providing vocational training, soft skill trainings, and then internship opportunity will be provided for a certain number of young people. The third subcomponent will be implementation of youth grants. Actually, there will be grants that will follow the grant scheme, but will be targeting youth civil society organizations, or again, civil society organizations that work with youth. I have to mention that we have a considerable amount of funds that will be disbursed for grants, close to 600, for North Macedonia I can speak, it's close to $600,000 for grants to civil society organizations, and close to $400,000 for only for the youth grants. And we always seek co-financing from the municipalities in order to make all our activities sustainable. So all the local governments will financially co-finance actually the grants we will award to the civil society organizations. The last activity in the project is the regional cooperation and networking as part of the project. Thematic forums and regional conference are organized on a yearly basis. The topics varies. I remember that we had a topic on conflict of interest, I think youth. The next conference is actually scheduled for the end of October. The theme is not defined yet, but we'll see. Maybe it will be youth again, or it will be digitalization. It's usually something that is of interest for many CSOs. But also we have a platform that was designed in the first phase of the project, where the partner municipalities that were part of the first phase, and also the new one will be added, have the opportunity, and also the civil society organizations that were already granted will have the opportunity to exchange ideas, informations, lessons learned, best practices, and they can even get into partnership if they need to, or they can apply jointly for joint projects. Just to give you the idea of what kind of projects we support through the grant schemes, I would like to give you a short, brief presentation of a few projects that were implemented by youth organizations in North Macedonia. The first one was in Kumanovo, implemented by Creator. It's a youth NGO. The title of the project was Volunteer Result. It's a unjust translation of the title itself in Macedonian. But what they did is actually they promoted the volunteerism among the young people. They worked toward the establishment of the service for volunteers in Kumanovo region. And as part, they organized a lot of workshops and forums, and I think close to 400 high school pupils were involved in those and debated on those forums. And as part of one of activity they did, actually they refurbished a children's playground in one of the neighborhoods in Kumanovo, and something that was even praised by the community itself, because it was a playground that was not used by the children because it was in a really poorly state. So it just showed that a really small activity can make a huge impact for the community, and it can be done easily by the young people through volunteering services. The same civil society organization during COVID-19 implemented a project for social interaction and economic empowerment of young people, where they work with, that is another project in Resen. This is a project that was implemented in another municipalities. It's in southern Macedonia, where young people didn't have a place where they can socially interact, and they can they can just sit, discuss, and talk. And what we did, the civil society organizations partnered with a high school. The high school made available, the old premises in the one of the premises in the high school was obsolete, was not used, so it was refurbished in a youth club, and it was actually done with the help from the high school students in the school, and it was also financially supported through the project. So now they have a place where they can hang out in between, the breaks in the school. Unfortunately, this happened before the pandemic, so hopefully they will start using it in this year. Also, a project that we are really proud is something that happened in Kavadarci. It's another municipality where a service was established that support children and parents of children that are bullied in the high school. Not only they establish an info center for this kind of support, but also anonymous line, which during COVID pandemic was extended for also the victims of the physical violence, and it's still working. There is a social worker and a health worker and I think psychologists that provide various supports to, like I said, to the parents and also the children that are affected with this kind of violence. And since this year, actually, we were informed that this organization signed a memorandum with every high school in these municipalities, and they will be the focal point for this kind of support, which just proves how also from starting from a small idea, you can just expand, and then you can, and this project can be easily replicated in other municipalities, and we hope it will give idea to other civil society organizations on what can be done through this, through the support we are providing. And there are many other projects, but like I said, this was just at the beginning support that we were providing through the grants for all civil society organizations, and now we are hoping that it will, with the youth component, we will have more targeted support toward the youth civil society organizations and civil society organization targeting youth topics. So thank you for being here, and I hope I'm glad actually yesterday to see that actually there are participants from the countries that this project is implemented. So I hope you will reach out to my colleagues and maybe get involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So thank you very much, Mrs. Georgievska, and thank you for telling us also for the other project, not only for Reload, but also how the regional program for local democracy in Western Balkans is directly involved with the municipalities and the local governments. So until now, we have the aspect of the EU and the integration processes. We have the aspect of the civil society, but now it's also the time to have the aspect of youth. So that's why we have also with us Mr. Falk. He's the deputy head of the Goethe Institute in Skopje, and Mrs. Gordana Bobovska. She is the officer for educational cooperation and PAS in Goethe Institute. So how can we engage youth, and how can we encourage young people to come up with ideas, and how can we persuade them to be active? So please.
Well, thank you very much for asking these questions. Actually, we don't really have solutions. I have to say that before. But we have an offer, and therefore we're very glad to be here. And this is it. And maybe, Gordana, you have your activity.
Yes. We are happy here to be with you and to have opportunity to present our new initiative, StayNet. And because stay is a very important word for us, I would like you to make some sentence and to use this word in the sentence. For example, although the weather in Kruševo is not so good, I really like to stay a bit longer here.
Me
and
too.
now you too. As Ivan said, there are always good things and ugly things, but I would like to stay. Maybe you can make some sentence with stay.
Maybe you can just say it loud without the microphone. We can repeat it.
It's easy.
Someone. What does the word stay mean for you?
Just a normal sentence with stay in it.
Stay in your country. Yes. Some in your back. Over there. Sorry again.
Yeah, I don't know if it. Can you hear me? Okay. Do not abandon. Do not give up.
Not dependent. Okay.
We can say it can mean stay in your state of mind. So we can say do not change your decisions based on, I don't know, money situation or political situation. Always fight for what you think is right.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Is not staying. Okay.
One more example for stay.
Stay
Great.
positive. Yes. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. This is exactly it. And StayNet for us is an initiative. Maybe the second slide. It's the Southeast European Training Initiatives for the Advancement of Youth Network, and it basically is a response to all the circumstances and things that you mentioned in your talks before, which are complex and where we don't really have solutions for in detail, but we have an offer. And the idea is to bring basically everyone together who is working in this field in order to have people to stay. Our inspirations are the quickly changing needs of the local job markets, the international job markets as well, which is one of the main reasons why people actually leave the region. And as our previous speakers told us before, it's a complex situation, and the Western Balkan markets are somehow small, and it's a volatile area. The best way, in our opinion, is to cooperate and bring and join forces. And it is basically our conviction.
As Val said, we cannot offer a solution for the many problems that we are facing with many challenges in our countries, like, for example, brain drain, brain waste, lack of opportunities. But we can offer a platform where different stakeholders, we can bring them together. They can make programs to support the young people in finding their vocational opportunities in their own countries, and the aim is to support them from their initial education in their transition to the job market, to the work.
Yeah, and basically what we have seen is there are so many actors in this field, but what is somehow lacking is a coordination and a joint approach to the issue. And we have seen that we can actually have lots of impact in Southwest Europe, where a partner project started 3 years ago. It's called StartNet. So StayNet is the partner project of StartNet. And there hundreds of organizations are actually have been joining, and also NGOs, civil society organizations. And it led to a network which really provided opportunities for young people and changed things for the better in Southwest Europe. So our ideas and our proposal is to try the same thing here, if possible. Maybe in the next slide. And of course, our main objective and the main goal is to find or to create vocational perspectives for the young people here in the region. And we believe by proper career orientation programs, for example, you can motivate people to look for job opportunities here. You might say this, there are other factors involved here, but this is our idea, that's our try.
We don't want to stop the young people to go abroad. If they have decided to go, they can go.
Exactly.
Many said that we are supporting brain drain in the Goethe Institute because we are offering courses and exams, but that's not true. We want to bring only realistic image from the Western countries and from Germany, because a lot of young people and a lot of people have idealized images of the life abroad. Many of us have relatives and friends who live in Germany and in the other countries, and when they come in summer with the big cars and a lot of money, we think that everything is fine there, and that's why we want to give a realistic image of the life there. And to make opportunities in our own countries so the young people can make a decision and can ask themselves, should I stay or should I go? Once again, we don't want to stop them, but we want to give them a choice to ask themselves, should I stay or should I go?
Yeah, and maybe what you're referring to, Gordana, is basically the brain circulation that we believe in, circular migration. Brain drains is something that's happening, but if we can get some people to return even and to transfer their skills, then this is better than nothing. Yeah, this is the approach, and if we just get 1, 2, that's an advantage. Yeah, if we get 100, even better. So we have to start from somewhere. We know it's a challenge, but we would like to engage in this. And of course, when you look at the facts, I mean, it's actually happening already. Yeah, it's happening in 11 countries. It started this year. There are several projects, actually a lot of career orientation projects in all of these 11 countries in the Western Balkans, and it's getting bigger. More people are getting involved, and that's why we are also here, because we want to reach out to you. Maybe some of you are interested in what we are doing. Maybe you want to be part of this. Maybe you want to create some realities here, because this is actually a reality. Please approach us, come to us, talk to us. Let's see, sometimes we can work together, sometimes not, but the idea is, as our previous speakers said, to cooperate, yeah, if possible.
Now we started this initiative this year, and 11 countries are involved, and we have only this year 20-30 partners in the different countries. And we want to bring all the stakeholders together, not only the stakeholders from one country, but from different countries together, and so they can work together on solutions from the problems. Yeah.
And maybe you ask yourself, how are they going to do this, and which methodologies are they using? Basically, it's really called the collective impact approach. That means joining forces, and you can create impact. We, of course, would like to use future-oriented and inclusive and iterative approaches. We are very much inspired by the New Work movement. We like to fail, but we like to fail fast. Yeah, and if you remember from your own learning experience, I mean, most of the time, where the situations where you learn the most is where you failed, and so failing is actually part of the process. But we want to do it quickly.
And only with joint efforts and with common efforts, we can make a common impact. We can make the situation better.
Yeah, and basically our main principle is the so-called learn, earn, return principle. You can, I mean, for everyone else, or for everyone, it could mean something else. We were thinking before, now when we had breakfast this morning, how are we going to do this presentation? What are the people interested in? One of the topics was, should we ask you, have you ever thought of migrating to a Western country? Or is that, oh sorry, is it better now? Okay, have you ever thought of migrating to Western country? Is that thought something that is somehow in your head at the moment? Or do you know someone who has migrated? Do you know about their situation? What do you think about it? We were not sure if we should ask that question, but it's a topic that for sure many people are thinking about. And as Gordana said, we are from the Goethe Institute, and we offer language courses and do all that. We do these exams, and we want to convey a realistic image of Germany. So if you decided for yourself, or if your friends decided for yourself, I want to move to Germany, for example, I want to work there, okay, fine. But please also remember there's a way back, and we try to work on opportunities to bring people back so that at least some kind of skills transfer in the countries here is possible. And even if you move on to a different country after that, at least for a certain period of time there's some sort of skills transfer, which we think is not really or not sufficiently here at the moment. So whatever we can do to improve this, we hope to do by joining our efforts, joining our resources, and that's why we came here.
To make a home a place where we all want to stay with joint efforts.
Hopefully you agree, and we look forward to talking to you to get your ideas. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you. I think that brain drain is a problem that troubles every young person in the region. So, and I hope that people will come back to you like lately today to ask you more. I will. Okay, so thank you very much, the 5 of you. You're 4 here, and the one we have from Zoom. So we can start from questions. So I hope that you kept notes. We have first. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. No, yeah. Does it work? Yes. I think like this. Okay, like I understand the fact that people. Okay, no. Let's start from the beginning. That's the first time for me in the Balkans, like the Western Balkans, and especially Macedonia. And I've been here 3 days, and I did try to speak with like locals. And I had like a very great free walking tour in Skopje yesterday. And this guy was very interested, and he told me that he was a geography teacher. Okay. And we spoke about that exactly. So, I mean, I understand that people want youngsters to stay, but I am myself an immigrant. I've been all over the place. And I don't know, I think like the Europe, like the idea of Europe, besides economical thing, it's this of exchange. So like now I'm working in Germany, I'm from Italy, and I stay in Germany, I think, well, it's not my thing maybe, and then I go back to Italy, and then I say, okay, enough, then I go to France. So, and every time that I go somewhere, I add value to it. So I understand that you think that youngsters should not go away from Macedonia, for example. But I see that maybe one day when Macedonia is going to be Europe, then youngsters from Macedonia will go to wherever, and people from Europe will go to Macedonia. And that, I think, is the beauty of it. Because then there is the exchange you spoke about. And so, like, for me, the idea of staying in a country, it's more like to me, it recalls like stagnation, not evolution, in a way, you know? Because the exchange for me is the beauty of it. So I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And when we came up with the idea, with the name, we actually had the brain drain in mind. That was the first idea, and we wanted to have something which is the opposite of it. But and I mean, you need some kind of name, and that was an acronym, and it fitted very well with the Southeast European and so on. But always we thought about circular migration, and actually what you say, when you worked in Germany and came back to Italy, you added something to it. Now you transferred the skills that you achieved, or the perspectives that you achieved in Germany, you brought them back to Italy. And then when you moved on, you brought it to Belgium or wherever you went to. And that's exactly what we are saying. And we are actually not against migration at all, as we said before. If you want to go to Germany, and I mean, for example, lots of young people from North Macedonia working in McDonald's. No? We have so many people coming to the institute saying, this is the best thing I want to do. Okay, if you think it's the best thing to do, go. Yeah. But please remember, there's a way back. You failed maybe, or maybe you achieved something. Okay. Tell it to your friends. Tell it to everyone. Yeah. Make it public, what happened there. And then, yeah, take that experience and move on. So it's about constant moving. Brain circulation is the word that we are often using. And definitely the STAY initiative is not to be thought as something that we really hold people back. Not at all, no.
Thank you for the answer.
Hi, can you hear me well or no? Maybe I should yell or I should turn it on? Let me try. It is on. So now you can hear me. No? So I should yell. Okay, I will try to yell. Thank you for your presentations. You have really set up the bar high, the expectation bar high. So probably if someone of the other speakers heard you, they will have a little bit of pressure on them. I mean, quite a depressing start, pessimistic start of the session. But now I can see that, yeah, we have some optimistic views from the last two speakers. And actually, I mean, the last two speakers, meaning Ms. Georgievska and Goethe Institute. So my question is addressed to you. Do you have any, I don't know how long have you worked in your projects until now, but do you have any positive model example of, I don't know, individual organization or change that you would like to share with us all? So some positive example of your work. This is addressed to Goethe Institute and also to Ms. Georgievska. Thank you.
As we said, we started this initiative this year, yeah? And within 1 year we have around 30 partners already. So I guess we are aiming at around 100 partners. And we have no solid financial backing at the moment. It's all contributing by the partners and by the Goethe Institute. So for next year, we are looking for funds, and basically what this also provides is basically a platform where partners can meet, and then you apply for the IPA and the EU tender and all that. So we're pretty optimistic that the money that we need will come. But even, I mean, sometimes money it is important, but it's not the only thing. What we realized within the initiative, there's so much hope, motivation, people who really are active and trying to do something, because it's something that they always wanted to do, but they were on their own. If you bring them together and then they suddenly come up with the ideas, then maybe something will come out. I mean, that's what we can do. That's what we can offer as the Goethe Institute. We link these people. And we have seen that it really works in Southwest Europe with this initiative called StartNet in Italy, Portugal, France. And the next thing that we are going to do is actually bringing representatives of this initiative to Southeast Europe, so that they can learn, they can exchange ideas on how to operate such a big network. And yeah, of course, you share best practice, and then that's basically it. And then let's see what comes out. Now, of course, there will be maybe some bad experiences as well. But what we've seen so far is there's so much motivation. There's somehow hope in this kind of thing, and we try to keep up that spirit. And maybe in a few years, everyone will talk about this, and maybe you could say it had an impact. We don't know, but at least we want to do our best to keep this thing going. Thanks a lot.
Hello to everyone.
Can you hear me now? Oh, okay. So there are many. I mean, as like the previous speaker said, usually it's the motivation that is the driver of what we're doing. And we hear a lot of time, oh yes, you're just talking and this is impossible to be implemented, or it's impossible to change the mentality or the way the people are thinking. No, the municipalities are not going to change the way they work and operate. And guess what? It's changing. So, for example, I'm going to give you, an examples. For example, Strumica was one of it's in southeast part of the North Macedonia, and it was one of the partner municipalities we work with in the first phase of the project. And they were the first one to introduce the lot methodology, the one I explained, and they didn't even adopt it officially. They said like, wow, this is something that we needed. We had a problem with communication with the civil society organizations. They don't have a trust in us. We don't have the trust in them. And this is something that is just put everything in place. We don't have to think how we're going to do it. It's just there. It's step by step. We just follow it. And they start doing it parallel with our with the grants that are done. We were done together with the Reload project. They started public calls for civil society organizations independently, fully financed by the municipal budgets. And they did it 3 years in a row, and they're continuing. They're not part of the project anymore, but they are continuing doing that thing, that way of transparent financing of civil society organizations with the inclusion of the civil society. Also, we started including the representatives from the civil sector in the evaluation of the grants that we are awarding, because the trust is that we are not sure how you are evaluating the project we are submitting, whether there is pressure, some projects to be approved or not, whether they're viable or not. So we included the civil sector. And it was really interesting to hear from some of them. We got all the time feedback, and one of the ladies, she even submitted a project, and she said like, my project is not gonna be approved. And I said like, why? And she was also one of the evaluators. She said like, now as evaluator, I start asking myself the same question that you were asking at the beginning, and I realized I didn't, give the answers that needs to be given. And eventually her project was not approved, but it was an experience for her. She said like, it's one experience to be on the side of applicant, and it's quite opposite experience, be on the side of the evaluator. And that's the inclusion and transparency that we always say. It doesn't have to be, like separate. It can be just communicating and working together. The change can be achieved and can be visible. So we're trying to, to achieve that. I know it cannot be done in 4 years. It's a process. It has to be done in continue for several years in order to be adopted as a process that is standard. It's something that it's existing. That's the only way it can be done. And after that, there is no backing into the old practices of direct financing of civil society organizations, of institutional grants. I mean, here the civil society organizations depend a lot of institutional grants, and that's survival mode for me. You have to think about project-based, approach and delivery of services to the citizens, and we are expecting these kind of, initiatives from the young people.
Thank you. So, do we have another question?
Yes, I have one.
Please.
Do you hear me or no? My name is Donna Darata from Albania. I have a question for Professor Ivan Damianovsky regarding to the negative effects that you mentioned about the process integration of North Macedonia, concretely Albania, and about the European skepticism that is raising in Western Balkan countries, mostly at the young generations. So my question is that, do you think that this kind of European skepticism, or this kind of stereotypes, if we can call like that, is coming firstly for the fact of the influences of non-Western power countries, like we know, and after that is coming about the instability of European politics and strategy that they are implementing, and they have chosen for Western Balkan countries like Albania and North Macedonia. So do you think that this kind of skepticism is coming firstly for the fact that here in Western Balkan are influencing mostly the non-Western countries, and after that, you know, is the fact that politics and the strategy of European Union in Balkan it sounds, or it looks from the citizens in Western Balkan like instability and not very much consistent and etc. like that. Thank you.
Can you hear me? No? Okay. Okay, so I think I can give a precise answer to your question, which is based on actual public opinion research and not on, I don't know, an educated guess. So, the rise of Euroscepticism in the Western Balkan is hardly affected by influences from non-EU factors, which I mentioned before, or even non-Western, whatever you call them, like Russia, China, lately, countries from the Gulf states, from the Arabian Gulf, and so on and so forth. Basically, the main driver of Euroscepticism is disappointment from the ineffectiveness of the accession process, in terms of how, not only of how slow it goes, but rather disappointment from the treatment that the countries are getting from the EU or from particular member states in those cases where there are bilateral disputes. And usually the main factors for Euroscepticism are cultural ones. Basically, they are steeped into questions of identity and basically fear of how European integration can interfere with autonomy of identity, self-perceptions, and so on and so forth. So they're not of geostrategical nature. They're definitely not of economical nature. Most of the support for membership in the EU is based on perceptions of future economical gains. So basically, cultural factors and identity politics are the main drivers of Euroscepticism. Just to give you an example, during the dispute between, at the time, Macedonia and Greece, right? Since 2009, up until the actual resolution of the dispute a couple of years ago, you had constant drop, negative trends in support for membership. From 90% in 2009, it fell down to 60%, maybe even less, after 10 years of being blocked. But that doesn't tell you the complete story, you would say that the country is becoming more Eurosceptic, right? That the population is more Eurosceptic. But if you go a little bit deeper into the structure of public opinion, you would see that the actual reason for the drop in support of the membership in the European Union was the actual dispute and the consequences of the dispute. So basically, if you ask the people, if there was no dispute with Greece, which is blocking the process, would you support membership in the EU? Then practically 90% of the Eurosceptic votes are, stashed aside. So, in countries which have experienced bilateral disputes or disputes with member states, or are engaged in fulfilling political conditionality imposed by the EU, which touch upon sensitive issues of identity and statehood, there you have more emphasized Euroscepticism. That's why I said in Albania, for example, we are still not having that. Usually, most probably, you will have that as a consequence of the disappointment that will come out of this latest blockade. But for example, in Serbia, if you follow public opinion, you'd see political conditionality deals with resolution of the dispute over Kosovo, prior to that handing over of war criminals to the court in The Hague, and those are sensitive identity issues which are impacting the structure of public opinion in regard to support for membership in the European Union. So again, to answer your question, no, it's not due to the influence from third parties, but rather the rise of Euroscepticism is most prominently connected with the actual development and dynamics of the accession process of these countries.
Okay.
Is it? Oh, it's okay. I have one simple question. I'm from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And my question is, what young people can do for our politicians to stay in this century and finally get out from the 90s? Thank you.
So, on who is addressing the question? Who do you think would like to answer? Okay. Who wants to answer the question? Do you want it? Because for youth? Of course. Can you please repeat the question? Thank you. I'm sorry, I cannot see where you are because of the lights.
No? Okay. So the question is for the four of you, if you want to answer. Okay, I'm from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I have simple questions. What young people can do for our politicians to make them to stay with their minds and their ideas, to stay in this century and finally get out from the 90s? Thank you.
We believe that you shouldn't wait for the politicians to do something to come up with solutions. Okay, now we believe actually that young people should not wait for politicians to take action, because as we've seen here, sometimes there are not these solutions that young people want, and maybe it's better if, and that's why we are here in the conference, to if people start, or if they try to take the future into their own hands, which is challenging and actually very difficult. But what we are trying with our initiative, and I think what you are trying with your initiative as well, is to enable young people or to empower young people to take decisions and to take the future into their own hands. I know it sounds very abstract and it's maybe a bit too positive, but we feel this is the first thing young people could do, and it could have an immediate impact. If you wait for the politicians and politics to change the future, maybe that will take time, and maybe sometimes it's not the future that you envision. So therefore, as lots of the speakers before said, try to join organizations, try to make your experience, contact other people, try to network and exchange ideas with other people. I think that would be a start, maybe not the solution, but a start.
And be more proactive, not to wait for the change, but to be the change, to make projects, initiatives, to make this place a better place to live in. And to be aware of their own strengths and complementary skills who are very important, for example, cooperation, collaboration, critical thinking, and so on.